Assalamu alaikum and good day, everybody. Welcome to the next episode in the Science and History series. This is part 3 of the Columbian Exchange. The Dark Side, Disease and Demographic Collapse. When people think of the Columbian Exchange, they often imagine new foods, animals, and opportunities. But there was another side to the story, a darker side, one that brought devastation across entire continents. As ships sailed between the old world and the new, they carried more than just crops and animals. They carried invisible passengers, diseases, smallpox, measles, influenza, typhus. These pathogens, long familiar in Europe, Asia, and Africa, spread like wildfire in the Americas. For indigenous peoples who had never been exposed to these germs before, there was no immunity, no defenses. The result was catastrophic. Historians estimate that within a century of Columbus' arrival, the population of Americas may have fallen by as much as 80 to 90%. Just imagine. Consider Mexico. Before the Spanish arrived, it may have had a population of around 25 million people. A century later, only about 2 or 3 million remained. In some Caribbean islands, entire indigenous populations disappeared within decades of the contact. The human stories behind these numbers are even more striking. Smallpox arrived in Mexico just before Hernán Cortés's final assault on the Aztec capital. The epidemic had killed tens of thousands, including the emperor himself, weakening the empire from within and making conquest possible. In Peru, similar waves of disease struck before Pizarro even marched in, leaving the Inca Empire fractured and vulnerable. It's hard to imagine the scale. Cities once filled with people fell silent. Families and cultures were torn apart. What guns and steel could not achieve alone, germs finished. And this collapse reshaped the world. With fewer indigenous people to work the land, European colonizers turned to another tragic chapter. I'm sure you must have guessed it, the mass importation of enslaved Africans to the Americas. The slave trade would fuel new economies, but at a terrible human cost, creating a legacy of suffering that echoed for centuries. More on this in one of the future parts. But disease was not a one way street. From the Americas, an illness traveled eastward across the ocean, syphilis. The first major outbreak in Europe occurred in the 1490s, not long after Columbus' return. It spread rapidly across the continent, feared for its painful symptoms and often deadly consequences. Most historians believe it may have originated in the New World before leaping into Europe, making syphilis the most infamous disease exported from the Americas. Although the Columbian exchange of disease was not entirely one sided, but the balance was overwhelmingly destructive for Native Americans. Their demographic collapse changed history, cleared the way for European conquest, altering economies, and reshaping societies on both sides of the Atlantic. Yet, even in the face of such overwhelming loss, indigenous peoples endured. Some communities adopted, rebuilt, and found ways to keep their traditions alive. Proof that survival and resilience can persist even through catastrophe. Although through colonization over the years and centuries, most of these have been destroyed as well, unfortunately. The story of disease in the Columbian Exchange reminds us that history is rarely simple. With every story of growth, there is often a shadow. But disease wasn't the only force reshaping the Americas. Soon, the arrival of Old World animals would transform landscapes and societies in unexpected ways. Horses thundered across the plains, pigs devoured fields, and cattle carved new paths into the land. That's the story we'll explore in the next session, the part 4 of the Columbian Exchange. Thank you and stay curious. Allah Hafiz.